My half-sister lied, saying I was a call girl and drug dealer, and I got kicked out. Years later, my dad's message on my wedding reopened old wounds. I'm Emma, and I would have laughed a year ago if you had told me that my own family would abandon me. However, that is precisely what took place, and it all began with Leah, my half-sister. Leah has always been dramatic, but I never thought one of her falsehoods would ruin my life. She had to be the center of attention all the time. Even though we were very close, I made an effort to be a good big sister when I was growing up. Leah was born a few years after our dad remarried when I was 10 years old. She could do no wrong. She was the golden child. She was loved by my father and my stepmother, Margaret, and she understood how to take advantage of it. Leah was skilled at manipulating others, but I was unaware of how far she would go. At first it was subtle, little remarks about me, such as Emma's acting weird lately, or Emma's been staying out late, would be made by Leah to Dad and Margaret. I'm concerned for her. They didn't give it much thought at first. At the age of 24, I was living alone and attempting to make sense of my post-college life. However, Leah continued to sow doubt, and I was unaware of it until it was too late. My father called me one day. I sensed something was wrong because of the tension in his voice. He said, "We need to talk. Emma, will you please come over?" Unaware that my entire world was going to fall apart, I went to their house. Margaret appeared to have made up her mind about me when I entered the living room, since she was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Leah was also present, but she appeared far too innocent to be the person who had just turned my family against me. Dad wasted little time. "I need you to be honest with us about what Leah told us. Do you use drugs?" It was so ridiculous that I laughed. "What? No, of course not. What is the source of this?" Margaret squinted her eyes. "Leah reported that during your stay last weekend, she discovered some pills in your room." I went cold. I believed that Leah had not been in my room. Nothing suspicious was ever left there by me. That is untrue. I have no idea what she is discussing. Leah, however, spoke out, her big eyes and phony worry evident. "Emma, I have been quite concerned about you, but I didn't want to say anything. I felt you might need help because of the unusual way you've been acting." I gaped in shock as I looked at her. "You're telling lies." Never in my life have I used drugs. However, what I stated was irrelevant. The untruth had already been ingrained in their heads by Leah. Margaret and Dad looked at each other, and I knew they trusted her more than I did. The fact that I had never before given them any cause to suspect me was irrelevant. Margaret continued, "That's not all. Leah said that you've had relationships with individuals. Are you selling yourself, Emma?" It seemed as if someone had hit me. Because of what Leah said, my own stepmother, who had reared me for years, was accusing me of being a prostitute. It was unbelievable to me. "No. It's unbelievable that you would even ask me that." Leah is telling lies. Again though, it didn't feel like my words mattered. They were entangled in the web that Leah had spun. Dad continued, "Emma," in a softer tone now, as if he wanted to believe me but was unable to. "All we want to do is assist you. We must know if you are in difficulties." "I'm not having any problems." With tears in my eyes, I screamed, "Leah is deceiving you." Leah gave me a wide-eyed stare while continuing to play the innocent victim. "I'm only attempting to assist you, Emma. I don't want you to become involved in negative situations like some of my pals did." I was unable to bear to look at her. "You're despise me." Margaret got to her feet. "That's sufficient. Emma, we can't trust you unless you can be truthful with us. We must step back, even if we love you." Step back. They were expressing that they no longer wanted me around. That day, I felt numb when I left the house. Leah's falsehoods had caused my own family, who were meant to support me, to turn against me. I was at a loss for what to do. My mother lived across the nation, and although she believed me, there wasn't much she could do from such a distance. Worst of all, Leah continued to embellish her lies. She began spreading tales about me being a drug addict across the town. After hearing the rumors, my supervisor fired me because he didn't want an untrustworthy employee. My friends stopped phoning, and I felt even more alone. I lost everything because of Leah's lies, my reputation, my career, and my family. She was enjoying the attention, as I was in a downward spiral. Whenever I attempted to approach her, she reframed the situation so that I appeared to be the unstable one. When Dad contacted me again to inform me that they no longer wanted me around, it was the last straw. "It's best if you stay away, Emma, until you can get help. You must not be around Leah. She has endured enough." Had enough? In their perspective, Leah was the victim. Even though I had lost everything, I was finished. In an attempt to start again, I packed up my belongings and relocated to a different city. However, the harm was already done. I wasn't sure whether my relationship with my family could ever be restored. Once it was destroyed, months passed, and each time I considered contacting them, I recalled their initial reaction, as if I were a complete stranger rather than their daughter. For that, I couldn't forgive them, and I couldn't forgive Leah either. However, as time went on, I started to question whether Leah's actions were more complex. What type of individual would ruin someone's life by lying like that? Was she experiencing something more serious than jealousy? I had to move on with my life, with or without them, so it didn't really matter anymore. The agony of losing my family still aches a year after everything fell apart. Even though I've been able to restore some of what I lost, I'm not sure if they'll ever expose Leah's deceit or if I'll ever be able to trust them again. One thing is certain though, they will have to confront the reality of Leah's true nature if they ever hope to have me back in their life. Holding my breath is not an option. It only grew worse after the altercation with my family. I made an effort to move on, but it wasn't that easy. The wound from the betrayal festered and got deeper every day. My life was tainted by Leah's falsehoods, and I was unable to avoid the repercussions. Not only did I lose my friends and work, but I also lost my identity. The final betrayal occurred when my father kicked me out of the house, challenging everything I believed to be true about myself. I can still clearly remember the day it happened. Desperate to convince my father of the truth, I had returned to his home. Perhaps if I calmly and directly explained everything to him, he would comprehend. I wanted to think that the father who reared me was still inside of him, the father who taught me how to ride a bike, who used to support me at soccer matches, and who always emphasized the importance of family comes first. I wanted my father to be like that again. However, I could feel the tension in the air as soon as I went through the door. Margaret was sitting with her arms folded in the kitchen, looking at me as if I were a nasty object that needed to be removed. Naturally, Leah was not present, but I knew she was there, most likely listening in the background while she waited for everything to fall apart the way she always desired. With a harsh expression on his face, my father stood at the kitchen counter as though he had already decided before I had a chance to say anything. I said, attempting to speak steadily, "Dad, we need to talk. You must hear my side of the story." The hush that followed his delayed response was oppressive. My heart was thumping louder in my throat with every second that went by. He sighed at last. "Emma, I'm not sure if I have anything more to say. You've been granted time. We have attempted to assist. You haven't assisted me at all." With a trembling voice, I shot back, "All you've heard is Leah. I can verify that everything she has told you is false. Just listen to me, please." I could feel Margaret's judgment stabbing me as she shook her head. "We've heard enough, Emma. Leah has just been worried for you and you haven't done anything to disprove her." I became so frustrated that I was unable to contain it any longer. Leah is lying out of jealousy. This is how she receives the attention she has always desired. Do you not see? She's playing tricks on you. However, my words were ignored. My father's face remained unchanged. He wasn't even taking into account my version of events. "This isn't good for you or Leah," he stated in quiet but forceful voice. "Emma, I believe it would be best if you stopped visiting, at least until you received assistance. Ask for assistance." Incredulous, I repeated, "You believe that I am the one in need of assistance? Nothing has gone wrong on my end. You're tossing me out because of Leah's falsehoods, even though I'm not selling myself or using drugs." My dad's eyes become stony. "This hostility in the house is unacceptable. I apologize, but you must go." Margaret's lips formed a narrow line as she nodded in agreement. "It's best that way." Stunned, I stood there. It was this. I was their own kid, and they were choose Leah's lies above me. I had the impression that everything I had ever done for them, every loving moment, every memory we had together, was being instantly obliterated. I gave my father one last glance in the hopes that he might change his mind or show some glimmer of hesitation. However, nothing was present. I couldn't find him. Without saying another word, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me, with tears in my eyes. A final brutal punctuation to the life I had known. The sound reverberated in my mind. The initial months following expulsion were a haze of hopelessness. While I was trying to put my life back together, I moved in with a friend named Jessica, who graciously allowed me to rest on her couch. But despite my best efforts to divert my attention, I was unable to get rid of the sense of abandonment. My chest ached every time I saw a family in the park or heard someone talk about their parents. Leah's actions of turning everyone I cared about against me were on my mind constantly. Jessica made an effort to be encouraging, but it was clear that she didn't completely get what I was going through. One evening, as we sat on her small balcony, she said, "Perhaps you should just get in touch with them again. By now they might have calmed down. You could." "No," I cut in, my tone accurate. "I'm not wanted by them. They were quite explicit about that." She gave me a pitying glance, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I knew she wanted to help, but you can't truly comprehend what it's like to have your family turn against you, to be deceived by those who are meant to love you without conditions, unless you've been there yourself. It wasn't easy, but I tried to reconstruct my life over the next 5 years. Even in the new city, the rumors that Leah disseminated had followed me. There were whispers about me. I applied for employment, but every time I was turned down, it felt like another nail in the coffin of who I was before. People's perceptions of me changed. They thought I was broken and unreliable. Then almost 2 years after my expulsion, an unforeseen circumstance occurred. I was working at a little cafe on a Saturday afternoon. Even though it wasn't my ideal career, working as a barista was a reliable job that helped me pay my bills. A man entered when I was cleaning the counter. Although he had a somewhat familiar appearance, I was unable to identify him. He paused before asking, "Emma?" Curious, I turned to him. "Yeah?" He gave a clumsy smile. "I doubt that you recall me. I'm Leah's Dylan." When Leah's name was spoken, my stomach fell. Dylan, God. I now recalled him. When we were younger, he had dated Leah for a couple of years. Around the time Leah began spreading those stories about me, they broke up. Why on earth was he in this place? All I wanted to do was turn and leave, but I mustered a kind grin. "Oh, Dylan, I see. What's going on?" He raked a hand through his hair and shifted uneasily. "I realize this may seem strange, but I've been intending to speak with you for some time. After everything that has transpired, I simply need to clear my conscience, even if I wasn't sure if I should." I arched an eyebrow. "Clear your conscience." He seemed truly sorry, as he sighed. "It has to do with Leah and what she said about you. The prostitution and the drugs were all lies." My throat tightened each breath. It felt more genuine after hearing it from someone else who knew Leah well. I answered, "I know that," in a tone that was colder than I had intended, "but my family doesn't." Dylan looked at the floor and nodded. "I apologize. I understand. I should have spoken out sooner, but I was unaware of the extent to which she would take it. She had her problems. Leah, Emma, she was always envious of you. I believe that's the reason she did it." I gazed at him, attempting to comprehend his words. "Jealous of what?" "You," stated Dylan plainly. "You had your own life, were older, and were more self-reliant. Even if you were unaware of it, Leah always felt as though she was living in your shadow. She wanted attention, and when she saw that making you appear terrible would get it, she went for it. She told me about it after our breakup, although I was unaware of its full scope at the time. Despite her shame, she was unsure of how to stop. My mind was racing. Had Leah acknowledged it? Had she really admitted to fabricating it all? And Dylan had been aware all along. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Anger rising within me, I demanded. This could have been avoided by you. Years ago my family could have learned the truth. Dylan repeated, "I'm sorry," in a way of making people question themselves, and I didn't think they would trust me. She also played with my head. Barely believing what I was hearing, I shook my head. Was jealousy the ultimate cause of all the suffering and heartache? That's why I was expelled by my father. That's why I lost everything in my life. My career, my family. Dylan waited for me to say something, but I was at a loss for words. I was no longer even able to look at him. I was only angry. I murmured, "You should go," and turned my back on him. "I'm really sorry." One final time, before slipping. I tried to stabilize myself, as the weight of everything fell on me while I stood there, clutching the counter. My life had been ruined by, and it was all because she was envious. Finally, years later, I knew the truth. Now though, what good was it? I kept thinking about approaching Leah after that day. My anger was unlike anything I had. It engulfed me, recreating every moment of betrayal and keeping me up at night. I was looking for answers. I wanted her to confess what she had done to everyone, including our father and me. Dylan had told me about Leah's deception years ago. Believed that learning the truth would bring some sort of to reignite old hurts. I didn't need their apologies, especially not just now. Life without my family's time in a long time. I was in a good place. More importantly, I had found someone who embraced me for who I was. without the baggage of my history, and I had a new career that I loved. Marketing for a nonprofit. 2 years ago, Noah and I met through common acquaintances, and things felt natural. As soon as we spoke, he saw me, Emma, as the person I had become, of everything. Without interfering in my family life, or criticizing me for the strained ties, I thought my life was finally coming. Noah proposed. We were preparing a modest, low-key wedding. I didn't require a lavish party. It was important that we free from deceit and treachery. Easy, of course. It had been years since I had spoken connections after they expelled me. I blocked them on social media, switched cities, and updated my phone number. Occasionally, I would learn through. Wanted to know how. I remained silent, even after Dylan came clean. How would I respond? Leah and believed their own daughter, and that I had to suffer as a result. For that I couldn't forgive them. Then, around 6 months into the planning of our wedding, I received an unexpected email. My father gave it to me. I opened the screen, after staring at it for. As I read his words, my pulse raced in my chest. Since you departed, Emma. Mind every single day. I can't express how sorry I am for all that has transpired, and I know we made a grave error. Leah, over you. Put things right because we miss you more than you're getting. As I've always dreamed, being there to accompany you down the aisle. Give me an opportunity to express my regret, Emma. Set down my phone. Did he wish? After all these years, he wanted to make amends after what they had done to me. I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. Noah asked me what was going on after noticing that I was preoccupied, but I was at a loss for words. I hadn't told him anything that had transpired with depth of the betrayal. Lifetime since I had buried it so deeply. I finally sat Noah down one evening and told him everything, including about Leah, my father, and Margaret. I most needed them. I informed him about Dylan's confession and how I still couldn't forgive them despite knowing the truth. With a contemplative on his face, Noah listened patiently without pressuring me to make a choice. Oh them, he added quietly. You are free to choose not the wedding, Emma. Not the past. I was. But they didn't help. Even though I knew my family would never be the same, I still felt apart. I wanted my father to be present on one of the most significant days of my life. The aisle, however. Their actions, I finally responded to. Was grateful for the apology. Great, however, I was willing to allow him to attend the wedding if he realized that our relationship would never be the same. Margaret and Leah weren't invited. There was no. My phone rang 2 days after I sent that email. Even though I didn't recognize the number, I felt compelled to take it up. My father's voice was tremulous and emotional as he said, Emma. At first I remained silent. I waited for him to say something, just listening. At last, he said, I received your email. I'm thrilled that you'll allow me to attend the wedding, but I must beg. Will you not extend an invitation to Leah? My stomach turned over. I could see where this was headed. No, father, Leah is not invited. You understand why. The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. His breathing was audible as he deliberated over his next sentence. She's your sister, Emma. She is still family. Even though I know what she did was horrible. Since then, she has matured significantly. She wants to make amends and is remorseful for what she done. I could sense my old wrath building. Leah ruined my life. Dad, you, and Margaret blindly believed her lies, and I lost everything as a result. She cannot simply attend my wedding and act as like nothing is wrong. I get that, he responded in a beseeching tone. However, this is an opportunity for us to reunite and begin our family's healing process. If Leah isn't at your wedding, I can't attend. It wouldn't be appropriate. I went cold. A command. On my wedding day, he was threatening to not attend unless I included the guy who destroyed my life. Are you serious at this moment? My voice was thick with incredulity as I asked, Emma, I'm not kidding. I can't abandon Leah, even though I want to be there for you because I love you. She is also my daughter. I had the feeling that I would get sick. Are you really going to pick her over me once more? My voice quivered with anger as I asked. You're still supporting her, in spite of everything that's happened? It's not about sides, he shouted frantically. It has to do with family. We must unite. No. I responded in a hard, icy tone. We wanted you to be there for me when I needed you. You didn't. And now you're attempting to spoil my happiness once more. Please don't do this, Emma, he pleaded. This can be fixed. No, we can't, Dad. My hand trembled as I hung up. My eyes were watering. But I fought the need to cry. I refused to let him, Leah, or anybody else ruin this day. To get here, I had to fight too hard. It was bittersweet. In the months before the wedding, on the one hand, I was married to my soulmate. My father, on the other hand, would not be present. Even though I stuck by my decision, it still stung. I secretly hoped that he would pick me, that he would see how much suffering he had caused by supporting Leah all those years ago. However, he didn't. He was unable to concentrate on the positive aspects, such as selecting the ideal outfit, deciding on the food, and selecting flowers with my maid of honor, Rachel. Throughout it all, Noah was encouraging and never pushed me to bring Leah or my father. He saw that this wedding was not about the shattered remnants of my past, but rather about us and our future. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my family's absence as the day drew near. My mom lived across the country, and we were no longer close, so I knew she couldn't make it. Although I didn't hold it against her, her attempt to maintain her objectivity during the whole situation with Leah caused a gulf between us that we were never able to fully close. Rachel threw me a tiny bachelorette party the night before the wedding. Just some laughter, lots of wine, and a few close friends. I was able to put everything else aside and simply have fun for a few hours. However, once the party ended and my friends departed, I was left sitting by myself in my apartment, gazing at my own wedding invitation. Even though I knew my father wouldn't show up, I had mailed him one. A part of me wanted to tear it up, to completely remove him from my life. However, another part of me, possibly the one that still missed the family I lost, was unable to do it. When the wedding day finally came, it was just as I had imagined. As Noah and I stood at the altar with our selected family and friends, the sun shone and the air was warm, and I felt at ease. My decision had been the right one. My dad wasn't present. Leah wasn't either, and I wasn't burdened by their absence for the first time. They weren't necessary for me to prove that I was happy and that I had moved on. It was sufficient that I had discovered my own happiness and my own family. I experienced a sense of closure as Noah and I exchanged vows, not the type that comes from reconciliation or forgiveness, but rather from making your own decisions and accepting that some scars cannot be healed. I felt liberated as we danced beneath the stars. Following the wedding, I had allowed the hurt of my family's betrayal to define me for a very long time, but now that I was standing next to Noah, I realized that my past did not dictate my future. Nothing, not Leah, not my father, not anyone, could take away the love and trust I had forged in my new existence. I felt whole for the first time in years. The day of the wedding had been ideal. I felt at peace for the first time in years as Noah, and I stood at the altar. It was the start of a new chapter in my life, one free from the heartache, deceit, and betrayals of the past. For the first time, I gave myself permission to think that I could create a life without my family's shadow. However, reality struck in as Noah and I returned from our brief honeymoon. In the days after the wedding, I felt burdened by my choice to sever my relationship with Margaret, Leah, and my father. They hadn't offered an apology or a last-minute request for pardon. By refusing to invite Leah and refusing to back down when my father gave me his ultimatum, I had made it plain that I was done. However, after you make those choices, the world doesn't end. Individuals change, and occasionally they spiral. 2 months or so after the wedding, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. My blood raced cold when I heard the message after I had left it on. This is Margaret, Emma. Please give me a call back. It's Leah. She's in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. Emma, please, we need you. I went cold. Leah had attempted suicide. I felt sick to my stomach for a moment. The sister that had destroyed my life lied about me and split up my family. Leah was in the hospital after attempting suicide. I suppressed the guilt that washed over me. I was not at blame for. I wasn't accountable for Leah's decisions. She had made them on her own. Nevertheless, it troubled me that Margaret had contacted me and begged me to come. In an attempt to determine Margaret's tone, I listened to the voicemail once more. Was it a desperate move? Fear? Feeling guilty? I had no idea. She was urging me to return to the mess I had worked so hard to escape, even though I hadn't spoken to her since I had gone. At last, I plucked up the confidence to tell Noah as he was in the kitchen preparing dinner. I said as neutrally as possible. I got a voicemail from Margaret. Leah is in the medical facility. She attempted self-harm. His forehead was wrinkled with worry as he looked up from the stove. What was it she said? Is Leah all right? I acknowledged. They didn't give much detail. Margaret immediately asked me to come to the hospital. After saying she was there, she sounded frantic. After wiping his hands on a towel, Noah approached me and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. How are you going to proceed? Uncertain. I shrugged. I'm not sure. After years of attempting to escape them, all in the harm they inflicted, I feel as though I'm being pulled back into it. I'm not sure if I can make it. Noah spoke in a soft, yet forceful tone. You owe them nothing, Emma. Your family made their decisions, and Leah made hers. You are not accountable for her or her fate. Even though his statements confirmed what I was thinking, it didn't help me decide. There was a part of me that felt obligated, the part that still remembered Leah as the young child I had once attempted to be, a big sister too. However, my logical side, which had established a life free of their poison, understood I couldn't turn back. I stayed up that night reliving the things that had brought us all to this point. The years of manipulation, the lies told by Leah, and the numerous times my father had picked her over me. With Leah in such a vulnerable state, was it really possible for me to return to their life? At this point, what would that achieve? I considered the potential consequences of actually visiting the hospital. How would I respond? Would they want me to overlook Leah's suffering because she was in a horrible position and forgive her? What if I wasn't able to forgive her? What would happen if I went and it made things worse? I decided what I would do the following morning. I had no intention of going. I could tell Noah was worried, but he was on my side. Are you certain? He inquired. I don't want you to come to regret this. I tried to persuade myself as much as he did, saying, I'm sure. Leah got here because of her decisions. I've wasted too much time attempting to make things right that weren't my responsibility. I refused to be coerced into returning by their guilt. I didn't call Margaret back. As a result, I chose not to visit the hospital. I stayed away because I preferred the tranquility I had battled so hard to the mayhem my family constantly brought. I got another message a few weeks later, this time from my dad. His voice was something I had not heard since the wedding ultimatum. It's Dad, Emma. I can see why you might be upset, but Leah is now in treatment and I believe it would be very meaningful for her if you came to see her. She is receiving assistance. She is attempting to atone for her actions and has acknowledged what she done. I realize this is a lot to ask, but perhaps it's time for the family to begin mending. Please give it some thought. I didn't respond, so I erased the mail. Leah was in treatment. My father said she was seeking assistance and confessing to all she did. However, I was wise enough to avoid becoming entangled in that web again. Even if Leah was making amends now, it didn't negate what she had done to me. She had been manipulating others for years. The years of harm and the reality that my family had deserted me when I most needed them were not undone by it. I got additional messages in the weeks that followed. Margaret called multiple times and left heartfelt, lengthy voicemails expressing their desire to reunite as a family and how Leah was getting better. To give Leah a chance, my father texted me to come see her in the rehab center, but I consistently ignored him. I had already decided. About 6 months after Leah's suicide attempt, I happened to run into Dylan one afternoon. It came as a complete surprise. On a bright Saturday, Noah and I were having lunch when I noticed him across the street. At the same moment he noticed me and he approached before I could dodge him. Emma, he murmured with a startled tone. I was surprised to see you here. A rush of unease washed over me as I attempted a grin. Since Dylan told me about Leah's falsehoods years ago, I hadn't seen him. It felt weird to see him now. After everything. Yeah, just out with Noah, I said, nodding to my husband, who was observing us from the cafe table with interest. After a little pause, Dylan resumed his conversation. I'm not trying to bother you, but have you heard anything about Leah? I tensed up. Enough has been said, he went on, disregarding the icy tone in my voice. She's in rehab, Emma. She's making a sincere effort. She has now acknowledged everything, even though I know she damaged you. Perhaps she is resolving her problems. I interjected, my voice hard. Dylan, stop. I'm glad she's receiving assistance, but it doesn't make a difference in my opinion. I've moved on. Dylan's eyes were a mix of grief and pity as he gazed at me. I truly understand. However, Emma, individuals can change. Perhaps Leah is attempting to make amends. I became impatient and yelled, I don't need her amends. I have no obligation to her. Her falsehoods caused me to suffer for years. Because she feels bad, I won't allow her back into my life at this time. Dylan let out a sigh. obviously understanding that he couldn't make me change my decision. All right, I simply felt you ought to be aware. I wanted the talk to stop, so I nodded. I appreciate you telling me. Before leaving, he offered me a melancholy little smile. After observing him leave, Noah turned to face me. Are you all right? Even though I wasn't positive, I nodded. Dylan had reminded me of past pains and memories, but I wasn't going to allow it to take me back. There, I said, I'm fine. Attempting to put the encounter behind me, all I want to do is concentrate on us and our lives. The texts from Margaret and my father became less frequent. Over time, I didn't care that Leah had finished her time in rehab and seemed to be doing well. I had decided to permanently cut them off, and I had no intention of changing my mind. Late at night, I would occasionally ponder what my life could have been like. My father had never believed Leah, and she had never told those falsehoods. Would our family still exist? Would the course of events have been different? However, those sentiments were short-lived, and I consistently ignored them. With Noah, I now had my own family. For me, it was sufficient that we were creating a life together free from the poisonous dynamics of my past. The calls eventually ceased completely. Despite their entreaties, my father and Margaret must have recognized that I was not returning. Leah also appeared. She had damaged, so I put the past behind me, where it belonged, and moved on.